All right, college football fans. This is legit now. It's college football playoff round 2 preview. Tonight we'll talk about the West Virginia connections, the Big 12 representative, and the games as a whole. To do that, I have two of my friends, two of the longtime guests on the show. First, we have the Daily Athenaeum past reporter, NJ.com, and my good friend Amit. Amit, how are we doing tonight?
Doing well, guys. How are you? How's everything going?
Amit, how was your holiday up in Bedminster, New Jersey?
Yeah, it was good, man. A lot of family time, a lot of food. I was happy to get back in the gym after Christmas because I was eating for a couple of days nonstop. So yeah, a lot of calories.
Yeah, got to stay away from the scale
Yeah.
this time of year. Save that for January. And then I have my other good friend who is well connected with Penn State and just a college football junkie, Steve Holgren. Steve, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing good, John. Unfortunately, like I admit, I have not gotten back to the gym after the holiday, so I'm going to hide the scale for a few more days, maybe enjoy a little more of these holidays. I think the dates between Christmas and New Year's don't really exist, so I'm in the blur right now.
Yeah, and you know what? It's a tough one because if you look at the calendar, most people like to hit the ground running on January 1st. But guys, January 1st, I think we're all going to be busy watching these games. Is that correct?
Oh yeah.
It's a big day. I enjoyed it last year, and if we look back to last year, not to say one person was a highlight, but January 1st last year was the day of Cam Scattaboo. That was the day he was born, and I know we got a couple Giants fans here, so the day the Scat was born was January 1st last year.
Amit, what are your thoughts, speaking of the Giants, before we jump in this one? The Giants win this game. Are you happy with the win, or were we rooting for a loss here?
I mean, I don't know. It's hard to root for a loss, but at the same time, I don't know if it really helped them. So yeah, it's tough. It's kind of what the Giants have been accustomed to the past few years. So nothing new, I guess.
So, guys, I'm more excited to talk. I've had you guys on for a few episodes now, and especially talking about college football as a whole, which we want to do on the show as well. And I'm really excited about these 4 games that we're going to talk about tonight. I put together these graphics a few days ago, and I've been itching to talk about these matchups because this is what college football is all about. It's not about the transfer portal. It's not about NIL. The reason we watch is for the potential matchups that we're going to see coming up in the few short days. So I'm super excited to do that with you guys tonight. Before we do that, friendly reminder, if you're a West Virginia fan or a college football fan in general, please remember to like and subscribe to JerseyEER. We really appreciate the support. With that being said, you guys ready to get into these games?
Let's go.
All right. So before we even get into the games, I have a few topics I want to talk about you guys. Came to my top of the head, and then I want to get your thoughts on it, and then we'll move on. So the first question is, and I'll give this to Amit first, is should the second round be on-campus home games for the higher seed? So going into the week, the Oregon coach, Dan Lanning, said that this game should really be played at Texas Tech. He thought that it's better for college football to have on-campus home games for the first 2 rounds because if you earn a bye, you miss the opportunity of getting a home game on your campus. Amit, I want to give this question to you first before I pass it to Steve.
I would love for it to be at home, to be honest. I mean, just seeing the environments in Norman and College Station last week, it was those places were buzzing, especially A&M, man. For Miami to go in there in a hostile, SEC territory and get that win, I think it was really fun. So I think, yeah, it would be nice to have another home game for us college football fans to enjoy.
One of my most Twitter has not been. I'm not huge on X or Twitter, and one of the biggest tweet I've ever had was last week. And I was watching that A&M game, and I tweeted just randomly. I'm like, could you imagine a home game in Morgantown? And it just took off. I mean, like 15,000 people viewed that tweet. So home games absolutely matter. Amit, that would be absolutely insane if West Virginia could ever host a home game in Morgantown, wouldn't
it? Yeah, absolutely. And we would be going for sure. I'll make sure of that.
Yeah, I think the JerseyEER show would have to do a show at one of the establishments down there. Steve, I want to pass this to you as a huge college football fan. What do you think about this? Do you think second round games should be on-campus home games for these teams?
So from the fans' perspective and from the university themselves, it makes absolute sense. The university wants that game at home. They have ticket sales, although they're probably split with the NCAA, and the cities themselves have all that revenue coming in because it's another home game and it's one of their biggest home games of the year, if not the biggest home game. So the amount of revenue coming into the city itself is massive. That doesn't even include the home field advantage that the team is going to get. Where the NCAA is going to push back is they lose that major sponsorship. They lose that major bowl game sponsorship. They lose that city that's stepping up and that's paying to have that bowl game be hosted. So it makes it make sense for the NCAA to have the first round to be a home game. I do agree with Dan Lanning. I think it should be the first 2 rounds because we've seen this in NFL playoffs, and I think we're going to see this in college football playoffs as the playoff expands. Is teams get momentum. We've seen in the NFL those NFL wildcard teams that just sneak in and they get hot at the right time. And if you have a away game as a team that gets a bye, that's a disadvantage. You want to have a home game going into that second game. So I think it benefits a team to play at home, and I think it's going to hurt teams that are going on the road essentially for an away game getting a bye.
Now, I have 2 great guys to talk about this, and here's why. Steve, you were at the SMU Penn State playoff game last year in Happy Valley, correct?
I was.
Describe that atmosphere. What was it like to be at the first college football or one of the first college football home games on campus? Like, what was the environment like in State College last year for that game?
So I've been to a ton of Penn State games. I've been to a multiple handful of whiteout games, very familiar with the environment. The thing that was different going into State College was it was a noon kickoff, and it was very difficult to get into State College because there was not many students on campus. So the amount of people actually driving in for the game, it was an older population in the crowd. It was a very different vibe for a day whiteout. Was it an advantage for Penn State? Absolutely. SMU from the Big 12 had never, ever seen an environment like that. And if you look back at the highlights, I mean, they were having trouble getting a snap off the whole entire second half. The crowd was so loud. But the thing that was different about that crowd is it wasn't a heavy student-based crowd. So when you're looking at college football, the thing that makes something like a Penn State whiteout great is you're playing that game in September and October at night, and the student section is what makes it great. The difference was there wasn't many students there because they were all home on Christmas break.
So Steve,
go ahead.
So you know something about that. I was going to tell Amit this. So funny story about Steve, Amit, is Steve came down to visit me at college when I was there. And speaking of games that students were at, Steve actually came down and visited me for the Oklahoma West Virginia game when Tavon Austin had 500 career yards. So, Steve, yeah, I mean, obviously it sounds like a really good environment. And then on the other hand, I have Amit who went to the Orange Bowl, West Virginia Clemson. Amit, just talk about that atmosphere as a whole.
Yeah, it was unbelievable, and especially after halftime when West Virginia kind of had, a big lead, and you saw the Clemson fans exiting. It was pretty cool. It's definitely a game I'm going to remember for a long time. Just being, that it was a West Virginia performance that I don't know if we're ever going to see something like that ever again, to be honest.
Yeah. So then my next question before we get into the actual games here is there a benefit to playing a round 1 game? I think that sometimes teams can get stale. We're talking about long layoffs. I mean, even if you look at from round 1 to round 2, there's a 10-day layoff. Amit, starting off with you, do you think there is any benefit to playing a round 1 game, getting the cobwebs out, or do you think it's a non-factor?
I think there's a benefit that, you avoid rust, right? I mean, that's one of the big factors that go into this. I mean, you're talking about Ohio State, Indiana, teams that haven't played in, 3 weeks coming on next week, right? So there's, that benefit that you're avoiding the rust factor, but also there's, the risk of injury, right? that goes into football. So I think you have to look at it from both sides. But yeah, from a rust perspective, I think there is a benefit. Absolutely.
Steve, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, playing a round 1 game, benefits versus cons. What do you think? Does one outweigh the other?
I agree with Amit. I think playing around 1 game definitely benefits. You build momentum. If you're a hot team and you have to sit for a while, that momentum tends to drift, and you have to build that back up. Yeah, it is definitely a benefit to skipping into that next round, staying healthy, your guys being healthy. But we're talking college kids here. They can rebound pretty quickly from 19, 22 years old for the younger folk. If I'm a coach, I want to play another round. I want my team, if we're good enough, I want to play again. But if I'm also a coach, I don't mind getting that buy into the next round. So it's, it's a devil's advocate on this one.
Yeah, it's a tough call, I think having, like I said, because you get the round one bye, these two questions are intertwined because if you have a first round bye, that means you don't get a home game. So hopefully one day they can fix this. I think home games are sick. I truthfully think that even in like the NCAA basketball tournament, like how sick would it be if they had like home court advantage? Like Duke had a game in the NCAA tournament at Cameron Indoor. That would be absolutely sick. So I'm all for on-campus competition. I think the fans appreciate it. I know the West Virginia fans, if we ever were able to host one there, it would be electric. So I'm all for that. All right, guys, appreciate you guys talking about that. Let's get into the actual game. Miami versus Ohio State, New Year's Eve. Already told the wife, don't make any New Year's Eve plans. We're not going to any parties. I'll be in the man cave. I'll have the ball on the small TV. I'll have the game on the big TV. Guys, this one's going to be a classic, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just seeing Miami last week against A&M. I mean, obviously, I don't think this is going to be a 10-3 game. I'd be very shocked, being that Ohio State is just a different animal than A&M. But I think for Miami to have success, they're going to have to win up front. I think Bain and Mesidor, if they can get some pressure on Sayin, that's going to be huge. I think it's going to be a game that's won in the trenches. But if Sayin has time to get his guys involved with Tate and Jeremiah Smith, it can be a long night for Miami for sure.
Steve, what are your initial thoughts on this game? And then I have a few questions for you guys to kind of lead into this and talk about this more as a whole. But Steve, just your overall thoughts on this game, your excitement on this game and things like that.
This is my favorite game for the New Year's Eve, New Year's Day slate. I think it's awesome. I think I brought it up last time I was on the show, 2002, Ohio State, Miami. The U was the best program, maybe the best team ever at that time. Maurice Claret kind of shut them down a little bit. So I'm very excited about this game. I think it's an old school college football matchup. This kind of goes back to our first question. Is Miami hot? They knocked off, some people think, the best team in the country, which was Texas A&M. Texas A&M didn't score a touchdown at home. Defense stepped up for Miami. Their secondary stepped up. And to Amit's point, if you can stop guys like Tate and Jeremiah Smith, it's going to be the Miami secondary that's going to have to do that. They're going to have to pressure Sayin up front, and that's going to be where the game is decided. I think that 9.5 point line is strictly based off of what we saw during the regular season. I think Miami's a very strong team. I think if Carson Beck can get hot early, I think Miami has a chance to pull a much needed upset, and I think it'd be great for college football to see that.
Steve loves Miami. Steve has always said that Miami being good is good for college football. So he loves his Miami Hurricanes.
It's great, John. They have an unbelievable NFL alumni base. And the people that like Miami are people that normal college football people don't like. So we love to hate the U.
They're like the NWO and WWE wrestling, right? With Hogan.
Yeah, we love to hate Miami fans. Love it. You want to root against them because they just always have that swagger about them, but they're so good for college football. And I love when the U is in the top 5, top 10 every year because they're just a storied college football program.
They just have a bunch of athletes on the field. Just watching an A&M game, it's just like, man, they're just athletes. Like they're fun to watch. And I mean, but at the same time, if they miss 3 field goals, if Tony fumbles, that's not going to do it against Ohio State. Like that's just not, the recipe for success.
I absolutely love what Amit says about them being fun because I have to admit, Miami is very fun to watch. And that's tough for me to say because, Steve, I was on the opposite end of you because I don't root for Miami because for a while they've stolen a lot of our players. You talk about Mesidor, who we see on the graphic, and Daryl Porter, and they have taken some of our key players. But as time has passed and time heals all wounds and you see the current state of college football, it's more accepted now. before we even get into my questions, I want to talk to Amit real quick. Amit, a lot of West Virginia connections here on both sides. So Ohio State has CJ Donaldson, obviously, who was a guy that was committed to West Virginia as a tight end and came onto the scene against Pittsburgh and ran the ball really effectively and had a really, really solid career as a running back at West Virginia. Coaching change happens, goes to Ohio State, more of a power back and goal line situation back, has had a decent season. And then you have Hakeem Mesidor, who's absolutely killing it right now. And he's going to be one of those guys. He's going to be in the same list as Tyke Smith, as the guys that got away that you wish you had back. And then you also have Malachi Toney, and a lot of people don't realize this. And his dad, Antonio Brown, who's not the Antonio Brown that plays for the Steelers, played for West Virginia and played in the NFL. So there's a connection there because his dad is a West Virginia alumni. He's a legacy. And you have the fact that Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator for Miami, is their offensive coordinator. And I'm not sure about you, but I absolutely loved Shannon Dawson when he was West Virginia's offensive coordinator those years that we were back in college.
Yeah, he was a offensive mind, great offensive mind. But yeah, there's a lot of West Virginia connections here, and I think a lot of great athletes that we're going to see on the field. I mean, obviously Mesidor is going to have a tremendous impact on this game. Obviously Toney has been phenomenal as a freshman, and just watching him play is just so fun to watch. And then Donaldson and what he was able to do, but has, I believe, 10 touchdowns on the season rushing. So but like you said, more like that goal line threat this year at Ohio State. So yeah, a lot of fun storylines, and should be exciting to watch.
So yeah, absolutely. And I love the West Virginia connections. This is a West Virginia show after all. So anytime I get a chance to connect a game to West Virginia, I'm going to do it. So my first two questions to you guys is, and Steve, I'll give this one to you, is do you think Fletcher, who's an outstanding back for Miami, can he run the ball effectively versus Ohio State?
I do, John. Ohio State has seen other backs go up against them that have had success in the past. Not so much this year, but you've looked at, I mean, obviously I'm speaking for Penn State, but Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, they've had success. I think Fletcher's playing out of his mind right now, playing up against Texas A&M. I mean, he was the reason for that win for the U. But you also have to remember, if he gets going very early, that's a slippery slope for Ohio State, because Carson Beck playing off the play action, he can spread out the defense very quickly. And I think that's what we saw last week with Miami. Carson Beck was able to spread the defense out. And then once Fletcher got going, the kid got hot, and he's a fantastic running back. I think he's extremely underrated in the college football landscape. He was not talked about much this year, and I think he should be looked at when it comes to playing on Sundays.
I mean, any thoughts on that? Fletcher running the ball? I know you really like Fletcher.
I think, like Steve said, I think he was a big reason why they beat A&M, and I think he's going to have another type of performance like that to have a chance against Ohio State. I mean, they just have a bunch of athletes, but I mean, he was extremely, he was running hard, and he was great to watch. So I think for them to win this game, I mean, he's going to probably have to have another 100+ yard performance.
Absolutely. My next question to you guys is, can Carson Beck elevate his team? Carson Beck last year definitely could not. Carson Beck this year has done some solid things. Wasn't great in the last game. Steve, you're a big Carson Beck fan. Can he pass this test versus Ohio State?
I would say I'm not a big Carson Beck fan. I'm a big Carson Beck supporter, because I believe he gets a bad rap for how things ended last year with Georgia. He got hurt in the SEC championship game that he never returned in that game. They were a fantastic 10+ win team with him at the helm there at Georgia. He had a more talented roster than he has at Miami. I think that team he had at Georgia last year was better than the team he has this year at Miami. I think if Carson Beck is at Georgia this year, they are even better than they are this year. I think Carson Beck is elevating Miami. They're not in this position without him. I think if he's on Georgia, they may be an undefeated team at Georgia. I think he's the difference maker to them. I understand why he left, but everybody looks short-term as to how he performed at Georgia last year, not what he did throughout the whole entire season. So I think having him, I think he needs that game. He doesn't have that game in the big moment yet. Everybody has that black eye from the SEC championship game last year. He didn't play great in the opening round of the playoffs. So I think his time is coming, and I think we're going to see that.
Yeah, Josh Pate said, and this is unrelated to your point, is this year's Georgia team, if they would have played the Georgia teams for 3 or 4 years ago, would have probably got ran out of the building. But like you said, now with the change, it is a huge change. And I do think that Miami is not in the situation if it isn't for Beck. Amit, asking you that question, do you think Carson and Beck can elevate his team to get a win versus Ohio State?
I mean, he's going to have to play a clean game. There's no doubt about it. If he's turning the ball over, they have no shot against Ohio State. I mean, I think they have to have a balanced performance between Fletcher and then getting his guys involved with CJ Daniels and Malachi Toney. So, I mean, I'm not always sold on Beck, to be honest, but he's going to have a clean performance for them to have any shot in this game.
Absolutely. Guys, I'm super excited for this game. In my opinion, I think Miami has a chance to cover this game. We predicted this game weeks ago. We said Ohio State, but I think it's going to be closer than 9.5. Are we all consensus with that, or does anyone want to change their mind?
Go ahead, Steve.
I was kind of hoping you were going to take this one, but I will here. I think Ohio State wins. I think Miami covers.
I think Ohio State is actually going to win by 2 scores. I think they're – I don't know. I just feel like they're a different animal than A&M. They're rested and, yeah, just a different group than what they Miami saw. And Miami didn't play clean in that game, and I don't know. If they do that, they have no shot.
Yeah, Ohio State, I almost forgot. I was looking up before the show. I'm like, how many games in a row has Ohio State won? And I totally forgot that they even had a loss against Indiana like literally 10 days ago because they've been that dominant. I mean, if you talk about the most stacked roster in the NCAA going into this tournament, I think it's safe to say that Ohio State has that. I'm kind of with Steve. I think Miami does enough to cover, but I think Ohio State takes this one on New Year's Eve.
John, I know you want to move on, but not to forget, versus that Indiana team, if a non-football player makes a kick, that's a 13-13 game, and Ohio State's probably winning the Big Ten championship again, which is adding another win. And I hate to say that word, but it's very hard to put a loss on a kicker. But if a non-football player makes a kick there, that's a 13-13 game that I think Ohio State wins.
Pat McAfee would be so mad at your comment, Steve, for the brand. Kickers are football players too. I totally get what you're saying though, and that's a fair point. I can't wait to watch this one though, boys. I think it's going to be the one that's circled on the calendar. The only game that can rival that one is this one, and that is Texas Tech versus Oregon, New Year's Day, noon kick. So you get the late kick on New Year's Eve. You're up partying, celebrating the new year. And then you got the morning to yourself, drink a cup of coffee because this is coming right a few hours later. The Capital One Orange Bowl, Oregon's a 2.5-point favorite. Guys, before we start, how important is this game to the Big 12? Amit, I'll pass it to you first because you're a Big 12 watcher as a West Virginia fan and alumni. How big is this game for the Big 12 and for Texas Tech to represent the Big 12?
I think it's huge. I mean, Texas Tech is probably the one team in the Big 12 that, people actually give credit to be honest. And I mean, I think for what Texas Tech was able to do this year is super impressive, but I think some people are still not sold on them, to be honest. And I mean, I think I've seen enough of them I am sold on them. I think, they're very capable of actually even getting to the national championship game. I think they're that good. I mean, especially with that D-line. I think it's going to come down on their offense more in, he has to play well, right? I mean, I think there's no doubt about it, and they have to get the run game going. But I think it's a huge game for not only Texas Tech, but the Big 12 in general.
Yeah, I mean, if you look, I think that's my only concern with Texas Tech heading into this game, Amit, is that they did not challenge themselves non-conferencely.
Right.
If you look at Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Kent State, and Oregon State, not exactly blue bloods, right? So, Steve, passing that question to you now, do you think this game is super important for Texas Tech to represent the Big 12 to get some respect for the conference?
Ever since we went to Power 4, Big 12 has always been the little brother when you're looking at it from, arguing with the ACC, but it's always been Big 10, SEC, and there's been no argument to that. I did not realize when even looking at this, looking back to October 18th, that loss was to Arizona State, which is not the Arizona State from a year ago. Their out of conference schedule has not been great. You look at their ranked wins, Their best ranked win is to BYU, Pop-Tart Bowl champions. No disrespect, Pop-Tart Bowl. Utah
Great game yesterday, by the way.
Great game. Utah has not been fantastic this year. And then when you cross-reference the schedules, just fantastic games across the board for Oregon. They went into Happy Valley when Penn State was supposed to be great. They won in overtime. They played Indiana tough. They beat a good Iowa team in a close game at Iowa. Iowa's not an easy place to play. So I think their schedule has been a little tougher than Texas Tech. Texas Tech has been great. They're just not battle tested. And going back to our first conversation of the night, John, they're coming off of a big win versus James Madison. I don't care what people say about James Madison. They dropped 50 points on a college football playoff team. They're riding high. So they're coming in with momentum. I'm taking Oregon here if I had to.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's why they're the favorite. And I think that kind of solidifies my point. Oregon had a really good setup this year with playing at JMU, who you're a favorite against, and then you get a chance to get some momentum. And now you don't play on the road. You play at a neutral site game. In my opinion, and I've talked about this a bunch, is this is a huge game for the Big 12. The Big 12 last year has lost some great opportunities over the years to solidify themselves in the college football playoff and show that we are the third best conference. If you go back to last year's game, Arizona State versus Texas, Arizona State, in my opinion, should have won that game. They did enough to win that game with Scatterbo and Sam Levitt. Then TCU has a huge win versus Michigan in the semifinal a few years back, and we're riding high, and then they go play Georgia in the national championship and get whipped. Then going back to Oklahoma versus Georgia, when Oklahoma was in the conference, they let one slip by when Baker was in the Rose Bowl versus Georgia. So I think, for me, this is a huge game for the Big 12, especially with how dominant Texas Tech was this year. Texas Tech dog-walked pretty much everybody besides that Arizona State game, Steve. So if Texas Tech fumbles here and doesn't compete or loses this game, I think it's a bad look on the conference, and I think it's just going to solidify what people think already, which is the SEC and the Big Ten run the ship. My next question to you guys, which I really want to hear from you guys, is Oregon a blue blood? So Oregon has the Nike power behind them. They've had some huge wins that are always in the conversation, but they don't have that national championship yet. Amit, I'll give it to you first. Is Oregon a blue blood?
I wouldn't say so at this time. I mean, I think they're always a national contender. They're very fun to watch with the amount of athletes, the way they play, the pace that they play with. But I don't know if they're in the same conversation as Alabama, Ohio State, and those guys, to be honest, at this point.
Steve, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree with Amit. You got to get over the hump. Yeah, they've had Heisman Trophy winners with Marcus Mariota. They've had guys like Justin Herbert who have been fantastic NFL players. They've had big names, LaMichael James, and we're talking 10 years ago, 15 years ago, playing in national championships. They've had the swag. They've had everything. And I know you reference the Nike money that's pumping into NIL. If you want to compare this team to another team across the country, I think they're staring at their mirror right now. Yes, Texas Tech has not had the historical success in the past 20 years that Oregon has, but look at the money being pumped into Texas Tech. You have Nike money on the Oregon side, and you have oil money on the Texas Tech side. When guys come into Texas Tech, it's not hey, we think we can pay you. There's actual money on the table for these guys. There's real donors with real financial cash supporting this roster. Texas Tech is a bigger, if not more powerful NIL monster than Oregon, even with Nike. I think they're looking at their mirror here from a Big 12 and a Big 10 standpoint. One is not the king of the Big 12, and one is not the king of the Big 10.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Texas Tech, hearing a conversation that was leaked or in an interview earlier this year, they knew their time frame, and they knew that there eventually will be guardrails around this, and there will be possibly a cap space and things like that. And Texas Tech said, we're going to go for it now and use the money that Steve's talking about to fund our team. And it's paid off, and they were head and shoulders the best team in the league. Guys, I like this game. I think it's going to be an entertaining game. I'm taking Texas Tech. Steve, you said you're taking Oregon. Amit, who are you taking?
I have Texas Tech. I would love for this to be like the old school Big 12 style shootout, like just seeing a lot of points. I mean, it feels like we haven't had like that type of shootout in the Big 12 lately. So I would love to see that type of game. I think the over under is 52.5. So let's see some points.
All right, flipping to the next game, and I think this is the most underrated game of the weekend, and that's the Alabama Crimson Tide versus the Indiana Hoosiers. New Year's Day, 4 p.m. kick. So right after you digest the first two games, you get this one, 4 p.m. kick. Rose Bowl, in my opinion, there's no better game than the Rose Bowl. Indiana is a 6.5-point favorite. Guys, my first question to you guys is, which coach is under more pressure in this one? Is it Alabama's coach and Kalen DeBoer, who is in the shadow of the best coach in college football history, or is it Curt Cignetti, who now has the number 1 seed on his back and has an opportunity to do something that hasn't happened in Indiana in a long time? Who has more pressure in this one? Amit, I'm going to give it to you first.
I would say Cignetti, just for the fact that they're 13-0, and I mean the national championship is obviously within reach, and people are expecting them to be there, at least in the national championship game. So I would say Cignetti, just based on his success that he's seen this year and as of late.
Steve, what do you think?
I mean, I'll have to disagree with Amit on this one. It's all falling on Alabama. You have to win if you're Alabama. Anything less than a national championship in Tuscaloosa is a failure. You look at Indiana. I'm going to ask you guys when this is done, name 5 Indiana players that have played in the NFL over the past 10 years, and then follow that up with name 5 Indiana football coaches over the past 20 years. You probably can't do either one of those. So with that being said, Curt Cignetti is the greatest football coach to ever come through the University of Indiana. Win or lose, he will be crowned the greatest coach at Indiana. I mean, what he has done in the past 2 years has solidified him as one of the greatest coaches. Anything more right now than what he has already done is icing on his legacy that he absolutely deserves. I think 6.5 points is absolutely disrespectful for the number 1 team in the country. They went in and they beat Ohio State. Yes, I made that comment that with a field goal, it's a different story, but you have to win the game. I don't think Alabama is as tough as a team as Indiana is. I think the Big Ten schedule that they played this year proved that they are a very good program, beating Oregon by 10 points, beating Penn State at the wire in Happy Valley, beating a tough team that Illinois is 63-10. They dropped 60 points on Illinois, who was a preseason top 15 program. I like Indiana in this game. I like them to cover, and I like them to win outright.
Yeah, I like Indiana, but at the same time, like, it would not shock me if Alabama, like, if we woke up the next day and said, wow, Alabama won that game, it wouldn't surprise me either. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think Indiana wins. They're just the hottest team in the country with the best coach and quarterback that's on a mission as well. So I think they're battle tested. I wouldn't be shocked if it's close, though, to be honest. I mean, I think Alabama against Oklahoma, they look shaky, especially to start the game. I mean, I think Ty Simpson's going to have to do much better. You obviously figured it out as the game went on, but I think their defense is going to have to be lights out, and he has to play a great game for them to have a shot.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to this game. Steve, I really wish I would have put that question in there earlier, because I was going to put, to start off this, let's rank the coaches that are in this with the 8 teams left. I think that would have been a fun conversation, but that could be a conversation for another day, because that would have been a really hot debate of, Ryan Day versus, the other guys that are there, and Kirby Smart and Cignetti. That would have been a really good conversation, but we'll save that for another day.
I'm going to make one comment, though, just off of what you said. Ryan Day was handed the keys to a Ferrari. They said, just drive it straight. They handed Ryan Day a 1998 Ford Focus with 250,000 miles on it, and he drove it like a Ferrari.
He did. And this is the first win he had over Michigan in a long time. And then Kirby Smart, too, had a similar situation. That would be a hot debate. Maybe we could save that for another day with the Final Four coaches. But that would have been a whole nother segment. We would have had a whole nother show if we would have put that debate in. One of the coaches that's not going to be there, though, guys, and this is a great segue, is Lane Kiffin, right? And that's Ole Miss versus Georgia, New Year's Day. It's the last little bit of our appetite that we get to have, the dessert that we could say, Sugar Bowl. Georgia's a 6.5-point favorite. My question to you guys is Ole Miss the darling of this tournament now? Based on everything, I mean, how sick would it be? How awesome would it be if Ole Miss came in with a Division II quarterback in Trinidad Trendless, and he was able to win this game, who's a great player, beat the Georgia brand, and do it without their coach, who just went to LSU. Guys, what are your thoughts about that? Is Ole Miss the darling of this round 2?
I would say so, based on the teams that are remaining. I think most people wouldn't give Ole Miss a shot to win the national title compared to the rest of the field, as at this point, in my opinion. And I would be shocked, if they do win this game, based on the way that Georgia's playing defensively. I think they're just they're just been unbelievable as of late. And I think, they played a great game earlier this year, 43-35. Georgia had a rally. I think they were down 17 in that game before coming back. But I think that Georgia team is different than this Georgia team.
Yeah, Georgia hasn't lost since September 27th, and Ole Miss hasn't lost since October, 16th? So something's going to break here. Steve, what are your thoughts about my question? Is Ole Miss the darling of this tournament?
Ole Miss is one of those teams that, like, my stomach, it makes me just, my heart, I want to root for them. I'm a Lane Kiffin fan, but it bothers me so much to see him accept another job, which is a whole other college football systematic issue with coaches leaving. But he built this team and this university to play in this playoff. I think they have a chip on their shoulder with their coach leaving. I think it would be a fantastic college football story. I would love to see it. Do I think it's possible? Yeah, I think they can. They had a preseason game last week or 2 weeks ago against Tulane, so they had their warm-up. But Georgia is very, very hot. They look really good. Their toughest opponent recently was Georgia Tech. I mean, they rode through Alabama like Alabama wasn't even there in the SEC championship game. They made Texas look like Texas didn't even matter in November. They're a very, very well-coached team. We said they may be the worst team out of the last 4 or 5 Georgia teams. That's irrelevant in comparison to this season. I think they're going to be a tough team to beat. I'll be rooting for Ole Miss. I'll be rooting hard for Ole Miss. Love to see those kids win with their coach walking out on them. But I think we're packing up early, and I think Georgia handles this one pretty well.
I'll tell you what, 2 things. Ole Miss, I watched the first drive of the Tulane Ole Miss game, and it was shocking how much bigger and faster the Ole Miss players were than Tulane. And I think Amit and me, I think we could be like almost like the SEC, like Ole Miss could be like our second team, like our SEC team. Eli Manning, Jackson Dart, now Lane Kiffin goes away. I think me and Amit can wrap our hands around Ole Miss. Amit, you have Georgia winning the national championship, so I'm not even going to ask you who you think is going to win this game. Steve, you said that you have Georgia in this game?
Yeah, I think Georgia wins. I will be rooting for Ole Miss, but I'm picking Georgia to win this game.
Yeah, I think Georgia wins, but I think it comes down to the wire. I think Ole Miss makes this a real game, and I think it keeps us on the edge of our seat until the very last second in this game. Either way, guys, all I know is that this is going to be an exciting week of college football. This is what we sign up for, man. When you talk about the best 8 teams, we found them with these guys. There's no doubt about it, in my opinion. And it's going to be great football on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Happy New Year's to you guys. I appreciate you guys so much for coming on the show and taking your time away from your daily lives to come on the show. It really means a lot to me. Any last words you guys have before we put this one to bed?
No, just appreciate you having us, John. Obviously, I think we have some great games this week to look forward to. Got the cupcake games out of the way. So now it's time for the big boys to do their thing.
And Amit, listen, you're no stranger to the show, man. I'm going to have you on a hell of a lot more coming up with college basketball coming up, and we have a lot of things planned. So, Amit, you are always welcome, and you are on the show for forever. So, obviously we'll see you soon. Steve, any last thoughts?
No, John, thank you for all you do with college football. Make it fun. Hopping on this show is always fun. I know you're always leading the conversation here, but I do have a question for you guys, as college football is one of my favorite things. I'll start with you, Amit. last question. I mean, who is the college football player you're most excited to watch in this round of playoffs?
Oof.
I have mine. Mine's easy.
Okay. Let me think. I would say I would love to see a great performance from Malachi Toney. Obviously, we know what he's capable of doing, but I think, if they're going to have any shot against Ohio State, he's going to have to be, that special freshman that we talked about. He had that fumble against A&M, but obviously he was able to recover from that at the end. So I think, having a great game from him would be awesome.
Me and Mitt, a lot of times we say the same things. We agree. We would make a very boring conversation because I agree with Amit, man. Malachi Toney, how could you say anybody else, man? He's a human highlight reel. He's young. I'm really glad he's not related to Kadarius Toney because that would have been a tough pill to swallow as a Giants fan. But his dad is a West Virginia alumni. I absolutely love watching him play. I would say the other guy, Steve, though, to name somebody else besides Amit, is the Fletcher kid at running back. I was super impressed by him. So I am really interested to see what Miami does in this one. Passing that question back off to you before we leave, Steve, who do you have?
Well, it's between two guys. Obviously, there's a linebacker for Texas Tech who's going to be super exciting to watch. Yep. But I'm going to have to go with Mendoza, the Heisman Trophy winner. I feel as though he has been undervalued as a Heisman Trophy winner. There's a lot of people poking a lot of holes in him as, quote unquote, the least high performing Heisman Trophy winner of the last 10 to 15 years. Statistics point to that way. His Heisman moments were not huge Heisman moments. Yes, what he did pulling that team together, he was the glue of that, which helped make him win that Heisman Trophy, and it's not taking anything away from him. But I want to see him step up and just put an end to all the haters and say, this is the University of Indiana. I'm the Heisman Trophy winner. This is my team. I'm going to put on a performance, and nobody's going to say a word moving forward, and we're going to be the national champs.
Speaking of Mendoza, based on what we saw today, it sounds like, or it looks like, he's going to be possibly taking over for our boy Geno Smith as an Oakland Raider. Yep. So that's interesting as well. It's kind of funny. Me and Amit didn't talk about the Heisman candidate. We could have a whole other segment about like the most like disrespected team, right? Like Texas Tech's not getting a lot of love. Ole Miss isn't getting a lot of love. Indiana and their players maybe a little bit aren't getting some love. So there's so many storylines. We can go on for days. Listen, Steve, that was a great question. I appreciate you guys at home for watching the JerseyEER show. We'll talk about this another time, right? We'll talk about the recap of this, preview the next round. As long as they're college football, we'll definitely be putting out content. So have a great night with the rest of your families. Happy New Year, and have a good rest of your night.